Caru Prabhu, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Please accept my obeisances, Gopal Bhatta Prabhu.
How are you?
I'm on top of the world. We just had our 20th anniversary celebration last Sunday, and it's hugely successful. We had about 1,000 people come. We had continuous darshan with Radhashama Sundar, continuous kirtan in the temple room on the outdoor stage. We had Bharatanatyam, Kathak, and some Bali pop. We had speakers. We had inflatables for the kids, llamas, cows, peacocks, parrots. It's something for everybody.
It's absolutely wonderful.
I was telling you, the Indian community was very well represented at our 20th anniversary, but most of the people who came looked like they were just Spanish Fort residents, you know, with their children and their cousins and nieces and nephews, and they were all grinning from ear to ear the whole time.
And that, of course, is the topic that we have, to hear about that and to hear about the 20th anniversary and the history of the development of it. I think that everybody knows you, but just as a point of introduction, you were the temple president in Sydney when Srila Prabhupada first came to Australia. Later, you were the temple president for San Francisco. And for part of that time, I was the temple president of Los Angeles, and we were good friends. And then you've done so many innovative things that have been incredible, including part of the team and the originator of the Festival of India. I think you coined that name, and that had a lot to do with expanding the accessibility and the relevancy at those days of the Rath Yatra. The traveling Rath Yatra was part of it, and your temple probably almost for sure is the first temple that actually got started with a radio station, which is like really amazing. And one of the first things that you did was to buy a radio station, and then from there you developed the most wonderful temple. And your relationship with, Utah, many people, maybe especially our Indian audience, they don't know maybe that Utah is the crown jewel of the Mormon religion. And they're quite strong religionists. And yet you count as one of your donors the Mormon Church, which is like really an amazing accomplishment of working with the local people. So, yeah, just a glorious history you have. Please start telling us about your temple and how it evolved. We're very anxious to hear.
We have to start, probably it was in 1976. I was on the BBT Library Party. Our commission from Prabhupada was to put at least one set of books in every college library in the country as references. At the time, there were, I don't know how many books that were published, but an order from a college library would consist of a purchase for all the books that were published, about $700 or $800, immediate invoicing, and then a standing order so that any future book as it was published would automatically be sent and billed. So Mahabodhi and Ganesham, who was later Bhakti Tirtha Swami, pioneered the system for placing books in the college libraries. We would go early in the morning. We traveled in vans. We'd stay at caves overnight, gather on the weekends under the guidance of Satsvarup Maharaj for kirtan and satsang. We'd go to the library about 8 o'clock in the morning and get what's called professor recommend cards from the girl at the desk there. We would take these cards to professors who taught in world religions or sociology of religions or mythology, any related area. And even if they didn't teach in a related area, but they were Indian, they might be a mathematician from South India, we would still go to them and get a few signatures. Professors would recommend. Then at the end of the day, we'd go back, show these recommend cards to the acquisitions librarian, and she would make out an order, and we would have that order and leave campus. So pretty much it was a fail-safe system, never failed to get us at least one order. Now, every once in a while, there'd be more than one library on campus, and every once in a while, a professor would order a set for himself. As I said, it's about a $700 or $800 investment. The most we'd ever done was Dartmouth and Harvard. I was on the Dartmouth crew. In both cases, there were 3 libraries on campus, all of whom took sets of Prabhupada's books. And in both cases, 3 professors took personal sets for themselves. So those were the records. 6 sets at Harvard and 6 sets at Dartmouth. I wasn't on the 2-man crew. It was the originators of the BBT Library Party, the veterans, the senior-most veterans, Mahabodhi and Gandhisham. And remember, we would hit campus at 8 o'clock, and by noon, we would have our order in hand, and we would be traveling 50, 100 miles to the next area. We would stay overnight at the Keoya, and then we would be at the next campus 8 o'clock in the morning. So Mahabodhi and Gandhisham, we got news. They had visited Brigham Young University campus in Provo, Utah, and they had sold, read my lips, 18 sets, 18, ladies and gentlemen, sets of Prabhupada's books. So I heard about that in 1976, and I thought, these Utahns are at least, 3 times more God conscious than anybody else anywhere in the country. But that was in my mind. So long story short, fast forward a few years, I'm life membership director in Los Angeles. I'm doing a radio show called The Krishna Show out of Pasadena. There's a station, KMAX. They rented blocked out time for the Indian community every Saturday morning from 8 in the morning till 1 in the afternoon. Travel agents, grocery stores. And we had our Culver City Temple Krishna show right in the middle of all that. It really worked to make the Indian community of Los Angeles aware of our temple and to step up the level of their commitment. We would have stories, I would have guests, we'd have bhajans, we'd do questions on the air with prizes. But after doing this 79 and 80 or so, 2 years, I thought that for that same $1,000 a month that we're renting time, 4 days a week, 4 Saturdays a month, we could cover possibly the mortgage on a smaller radio station somewhere else in the country. And so I started monitoring the classified section of a publication called Broadcast Weekly, where radio stations were advertised for sale throughout the country. And about 1980, 81, I saw this small AM radio station, 1480, advertised for sale near, of all places, Provo, Utah. So bells started ringing. Provo, BYU, 18 sets of standing orders. Came with 5 acres of land. I'd heard Utah was magnificent, wonderful country for outdoorsmen with canyons, hikes, striking scenes all over the place. Here was a radio station that was just 6 miles from Brigham Young University, one of the biggest, wealthiest campuses in the world, with 35,000 students on average. There's another college campus called Utah Valley University, just a few miles away as well. I knew that the Mormons, I didn't know much about the Mormons, but I knew they had missionaries all over the world. And in order to be missionaries in foreign countries, they had to learn foreign languages. They had to live in all kinds of different cultural contexts. And so I assumed that they weren't exactly provincial, that they were broad-minded and well-experienced. And the station was going for a pretty good price. It wasn't doing well commercially. It was under the shadow of the commercial stations in Provo, and then Salt Lake City's only 50 miles away. So we came up to view it. We had gotten some money in Los Angeles as a side gig, you might say, to being life membership director. I had started taking the paraphernalia, which was originally meant for the traveling Rath Yatra festivals, the program which Madhua eventually inherited and does to this day. And I had parlayed that during the off months. We would do Rath Yatras during the summer, but then there was nothing for that paraphernalia, no way to engage it the other 9 months of the year. Well, those are the 9 months of the year the colleges are in session. So I went to the in charge there in Los Angeles, Ramaswamy, and I said, can we take this equipment, these exhibits, and book colleges for a Festival of India? He thought that would be great. And I asked him, I said, can we use the funds that we generated according to our own discretion? And he said, yeah, sure. If you generate funds from that, you have my blessings. So after 18 months, I had a portfolio with glowing letters of recommendation from the presidents and professors of most of the colleges in Southern California. We'd gone everywhere. We'd done bhajans. We even had elephant rides on many occasions, exhibits. We catered food. We had a boutique. So we had about $120,000 net that we generated from that activity. And at that time, I had the ability to put a small down payment on this particular radio station in Utah. Now, having put the down payment on it, we still had a 10-year mortgage. It was about $1,500 a month. And so it was all we could do to scrape together the $1,500 a month to cover the mortgage of the radio station. In 1987, with the help of Madua and Batsal, who were living in the area at that time, we built a 3,500 square foot log building with a full-length basement and a living room. And in 1987, we started our Sunday feast every Sunday at 5 o'clock. And meanwhile, this prime piece of land adjacent to us, as you know, radio station, AM radio stations have their tower, and the tower is usually on the highest piece of the land. But there was this adjacent area actually contained higher ground than our tower was on, and it overlooked the entirety of South Utah Valley, magnificent piece of land. You could see I-15, northbound traffic to Salt Lake and Yellowstone, southbound traffic to Las Vegas, Los Angeles, and San Diego. It's all just like 2.5 miles away. Beautiful mountain views there we go. Thank you very much, Shakshiko. Beautiful mountain views. Those are the Wasatch Mountains there to the east, and to the west, again, flat agricultural plains, fields with cows, and then I-15. So there was a for sale sign on this 8.5 acres of land. It was owned by the Catholic Church. And, the whole 10 years that we were paying the mortgage for the radio station, I was expecting this land to be snapped up at any moment. I would expect someone to build their dream house and have laundry hanging out to dry in the backyard, and we would have to kind of put up with this rasa basa, this incongruity. Well, 10 years went by. Nobody bought the land. Can you imagine? It was like Krishna kind of pulled down a veil and hid it, made it invisible to people, kept it aside for us. Once in a while, I would call the Catholic Church and sort of feel them out. There was a lady named Barbara Gladowski. She was in charge of real estate for the Catholic Church. And she just very abrupt, very curt. She said, $95,000 cash. I said, would you finance? No, we won't finance. We want cash. Well, we couldn't float a loan because I never had a bank account. I've been a missionary for 50 years. I have no, when you run my name through TRW, it comes up like I never existed. So we weren't able to finance any land, and we didn't really have a down payment. So throughout the 10 years, I would just feel them out and get the same sort of rebuff from Barbara Gladowski. Finally, around 1991, we paid off the mortgage of the radio station. The land was still for sale. Can you imagine? A new person had taken over the real estate. Barbara had retired. His name was Rick Salviti. As I talked to him, we got to be friends. Turns out I'm from Stallstown, Pennsylvania, a small town of not more than 100 people. Rick Salviti is from Falling Waters, Pennsylvania, which is even smaller than Stallstown. It's only 10 miles away. It's famous. If the name rings a bell, it's because where Frank Lloyd Wright built his famous residential building, the Falling Waters. So we got to be real friendly, and we didn't have the means to buy the whole acreage. We didn't have the means to get a loan. So we were talking about just getting 1 acre, 2 acres or something. Finally, after this went back and forth for some time, Rick called me up one day on the phone. He said, Caru, or Chris, he said, I talked to the bishop. We need to raise some cash. We want to unload some land. I'm going to lower the price from $95,000 to $75,000. This is for 8.5 acres of land. It's worth over $1 million now, easily. And we're going to finance it for you. And I thought, when can I sign the papers, Rick? Because I knew at that price and under those conditions, it's really going to be a matter of hours before the land is sold. So we couldn't sign the papers fast enough. And sure enough, he told me 2 days after we signed the papers and became contractually obligated, there were offers that came in for bigger amounts. They offered more than the $75,000 selling price. Now, we still had a problem. We had to come up with a down payment of $25,000 within a short period of time. We had 17, but I needed to find $8,000 pronto, really, really quickly. Funny thing was, in those days, there weren't many llamas around. There was a lot of demand for llamas, and there was a small supply. So we had gotten into the llama raising business as a means of supplemental income. And routinely, we sold male llamas for $1,000 and female llamas for $2,500, $3,000. Just timely, the right time. A local businessman, Bryant Summerhays, who owns a string of music stores up and down the Wasatch Front, he came shopping for a female llama. He figured that he could buy a female llama, and then the first time that llama had a baby, he could sell the baby and get his original investment back. So we're standing on the fence, and I'm pointing out the various female llamas. This one's 2,500, this one's 3,000. Now, we had one llama at that time who was the Krishna color. She was a bluish black llama. In fact, we called her Shami. Sham means, as you know, the color of a monsoon cloud during the rainy season, and mean is the feminine. So Bryant Summerhays had no eye for any of the other llamas. His eye went to the Shamin, the Krishna colored llama, and he said, "How much is that llama?" And I didn't premeditate it. I really think Krishna spoke the words. I don't have any recollection of cogitation before answering him, but I just blurted out $8,000. He wrote out a check on the spot. That's my own personal testimony about, if anybody has a doubt that in fact the Shama Sundar, the Krishna, the color of a monsoon cloud during the rainy season, if anyone has any doubt that that is the most attractive color, this is my own story to verify that in fact this is accurate. All right, so we got the land. Now we had 15 acres of land altogether, 14 acres of land with the original property. This is the house we built in 1987, courtesy of Madua and Batsala, who are both very, very skilled handicraftsmen, tradesmen. This is the radio station that we ran for many years, 1480 AM, full menu of episodes from the Mahabharata, the Ramayana, bhajans, kirtans, episodes, the Vedic Observer, how I came to Krishna consciousness, lectures and interviews. In fact, the whole text practically of Radhanath Swami Journey Home, I recorded in our studio in Los Angeles many, many years. This is like 1979 or 1980. And that went into the playlist of our radio station many, many years before, again, Ganesham Bhaktitirtha Swami convinced Radhanath Swami to turn that material into a book. Okay, so here we are. Some or other, we've got a radio station paid for. We've got a down payment on a piece of land. We've got 14 acres. We've got a beautiful temple site. But we're not sure how the local community is going to react to the announcement of our building a Hare Krishna temple in an area that's 90% Mormon. Mormons call this area Zion, after the promised land. So we thought we'll keep a low foul. We'll take 10 years to pay off the mortgage again on the land. And then maybe 10 years down the line, maybe 2001, 2002, we'll cautiously announce our hope to build a temple and then see how the community reacts to it. Well, why don't we play this clip if you have it queued up, Shakshi Gopal. This is produced by BYU Television, and it actually tells the story how the community stepped forward in order to give us the nod to start fundraising and start announcing for the temple construction. We would have waited for another 10 years, but it was the overwhelmingly positive response of the community that caused us to start right then and there in 1981. This is a video clip, if you have it, Shakshi, called How Krishna Came to Utah Valley, and it tells this little bit of the story.
It was the radio and my love for public speaking that brought us here. We didn't envision starting a temple. It was all that we could imagine to pay this mortgage off for the land and the radio station. But 10 years later, the mortgage was paid off and the adjacent 8.5 acres on which this temple stands became available. We were able to, again, put another down payment on that. We started construction of this Rajasthani-style temple in 1998 and opened in 2001. Literally weeks after we secured the land, my wife was giving a Sunday talk at the log house, which is where we held our services at the time. There was a reporter from the Daily Universe in the crowd. She happened to mention that we'd acquired land and eventually we would build a temple. Well, that was Sunday, and Tuesday an article came out in the Daily Universe leaving out the word eventually. Then by Thursday or Friday, the Deseret News and Salt Lake Tribune had picked up on the story. And the whole mood was overwhelmingly supportive, overwhelmingly positive, overwhelmingly encouraging. And so we thought, well, maybe we don't have to wait 10 years.
This temple is real special because of the situation of it. It's like a jewel in a beautiful setting. So the whole atmosphere of it is so pleasing. People come here and they say, I feel spiritual when I come here.
I loved it. I loved today, and I'm sure I would love to visit other services at other religions. I really enjoyed the sense of community that, you could literally feel the acceptance from everyone in the room. Even with these things, these rituals that were extremely different from anything Western, anything that I've ever done, I still felt really included and really welcomed.
So I'm what's called a kirtaniya. Kirtan is our call and response chanting. So if you ever go to a Krishna temple or if you ever see Hare Krishnas, they're always doing this call and response chanting called kirtan. When I sing, my heart becomes free. I feel free. Like anything that's bothering me, it doesn't bother me as much. I can still get knocked down, but I get it faster. Instead of a conquest or another race or another religion even, or another otherness that separates us, when really we're more connected than we think.
The essence of it is not a cultural thing, it's a spiritual thing. That we're not our bodies, we're not Indian or American, we're not Hindu or Mormon or born-again Christian. We're souls, and all souls are part of God.
Once again, that video was made by Brigham Young University Television itself. So we've got the nod from the community. We've got the land, but we need money. We need at least $1.2 million to build the temple. I remember at the time I was running, every Saturday morning, 30 or 40 runners would gather at 6 in the morning by what they call the Bishop's Storehouse and run along Provo, Spanish Fort Creek and what's called Tree Line Road. And they would, the runners are all Mormons, and they would talk about jazz basketball and all things Mormon. And eventually they would run out of topics and they would say, Caru, chant the sun mantra. And I'd say, Yak Chak Churesa, Sabita Sakara Garam Raja Samasti Ashura, Yashagnaya, Brahmati Samamrija, and everybody would, and we would all greet the sun when it comes up, and they'd say, they'd ask me what's going on with the Krishna temple. I'd never prompt them. I'd never proselyte or anything. But eventually they would all clump around me as we were jogging along on our 20-mile training run and ask me to bring them up to date on all things Krishna. And I remember one Saturday morning, we were all running in a group, and somebody asked me, Churu, I heard you guys are going to build a temple. I said, that's true. We intend to build a temple. He said, how much is it going to cost? And I said, about $1.2 million. He said, how much have you raised so far? And I said, 12,000. And the whole group, like 30 people, it's like they're gut punched. They like stopped running. They all turned to stare at me and they said, you said 120,000, right? I said, no, 12,000. And in fact, the first $12,000 that we'd raised went just for leveling. You know, you had to have a road where construction vehicles could come up, and you had to have a flat plane on which you could lay your foundation. And that's where the first $12,000 of our fundraising went. It's generally well known in America that one of our means of income, aside from selling llamas, was selling cookies. For 24 years, we would get permission from Walmarts and Kmarts and go to the exit doors and sell cookies. To this day, I can sell cookies in Spanish: chocolate, avena con paso, cacahuate, uno packet por $2, tres packet por $5. 1 bag for $2, 3 bags for $5. Throughout all of the Southwest and Utah and even Arizona, we'd go in our little motor home with our prepackaged cookies, sell cookies for years and years and years. I remember one year I came to the Southern California area from Utah. It was winter, so you can't go outdoors and sell cookies in Utah in the winter. It's too cold. So I came down to the San Bernardino Riverside area, which is about 80 miles east of Los Angeles. And I had my little Dolphin motorhome, and it was packed full of cookies. So I went out and I sold cookies for about 88 straight days. And then finally I had a break, a free day, and I went to visit the temple in Los Angeles. This was January, right? So Savas came up and he hugged me and he said, "True, so nice to see you. When did you come?" This is January. So I quipped. I said, "I came in November." So I had already been in the area for 3 months selling cookies. And eventually through the cookie sales, we were able to pour the concrete platform with the plumbing and the water and everything. And Sridhar Swami, the Jolly Swami, used to visit us quite often in those days. And we would sit out in the front of the porch of the log house and talk katha, and the traffic goes by. And I remember one evening, Sridhar Swami says, "So Caru, how is the temple coming?" I said, "Well, Maharaj, frankly, you know, I'm having some sleepless nights. I'm waking up like 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning thinking, you know, are we going to be able to finish what we started? You know, have we bit off more than we could chew? Is this over endeavor?" And he said, "Well, what have you achieved so far?" And I said, "Well, we've got the slab poured." And he just laughed and laughed. And he said, "Caru, once you pour the slab, it's a done deal." So after he said that, I never woke up in a panic at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. I knew that some or other, Krishna will always finish what he starts. And shortly thereafter, that was made very evident to me. Throughout the early stages, I would hear these whispers from the Indian community. Dinesh Patel, he's got a very profitable company called Theratech. He's an up and coming. Why don't you try to get Dinesh Patel to support your fundraising efforts? And I thought, well, he's in Salt Lake, we're in Spanish Fork. He might be more interested in a temple in the Salt Lake area than down here in Spanish Fork. Who knows? You know, some people want a Hindu temple, overtly Hindu temple, and while we're under the general umbrella of Hinduism, we're also ISKCON as well. One day I got a check in the mail from Dinesh Patel for $51. So I knew this is Dinesh Patel and his wife Kalpana, and they're talking to Senator Orrin Hatch on the occasion of the temple opening June 23rd, 2001. It was because of Dinesh's connections that Orrin Hatch flew out from Washington to be personally present at the opening of the temple. Another person who was there was a Utah County Commissioner who had been our good friend. His name was Gary Herbert, and he just finished 8 years as governor of Utah as well. So I'd never met Dinesh Patel. Well, it so happened that I believe it was Narayan Sutar from the Gujarati community invited me to do a puja in his home. After the puja, in his backyard, there was a long banquet table set out, and we're all sitting and enjoying vegetarian meals. I was at the upper end of the table, and from the other side of the table, some distance down, a voice said, "Caru." I looked, and it was Dinesh Patel. I was seeing him, meeting him, hearing him for the first time. He said, "How's the fundraising going for the new temple in Spanish Fork?" And I said something modest. I mean, I'm sure we only had a few $1,000s. And he said right out there amongst the 30 or 40 members of the Gujarati community, he said, "I will match the first $50,000. At that point, I knew we were going to be successful. We had one of the most influential, wealthy men, the most influential, wealthy person of the Gujarati/Indian community committing to the construction of the temple. I can't tell you what a watershed that was for me. That Krishna had sent that connection with Dr. Dinesh Patel in order to finish what we had started. Dinesh Patel was personal friends with then Governor Levitt at that time, even better friends with Governor Huntsman, better friends with Governor Herbert. I can't get into it now, but Dinesh Patel, in the background, never wanting to take the limelight for himself, has probably more to do with the economic robustness and health of Utah over the last 20 years than any other single member of the public now. He used to call me every Sunday night around 9 o'clock, and he would ask me in detail what had transpired during the previous week on the temple construction. His wife, Kalpana, once told me, Dinesh is a man of few words. Kalpana once told me, Dinesh doesn't talk to anybody as long as he talks to you. True. A multi-billionaire, Sorensen or Eccles, will call Dinesh and he'll and hump, say a few monosyllables and hang up after 30 seconds or so. But he calls you every Sunday night and he talks to you for 20 or 30 minutes. I don't know anybody that he talks to that much. Later on, we were invited to an award ceremony. He was inducted into the Utah Technological Council Hall of Fame. And there was a biographical movie made about Dinesh. It was showed to all the movers and shakers. I mean, anybody was there. The other guy who received the award at the same night as Dinesh was the founder of Microsoft. So you get the idea. So there was this film shown to everybody, and the temple was prominent. By Dinesh's express wishes, that temple in Spanish Fork was seen from every angle. And obviously, everybody could understand that that was a project that was very, very dear to his heart. So we're building the temple, and I thought, in order to get supplemental funds, why not apply for grants? There are a lot of private charitable foundations, a lot of multimillionaires in Utah. I mentioned the Sorensens, the Eccles, the Huntsmans. And in a computer, it's just as easy to submit 50 grant applications as it is one. You just write it out, you have a certain template, and then you send it out. So I sent out about 50 grant requests to all the private charitable foundations that I could discover. And these private charitable foundations usually give to the same people year after year. They don't really allow new people to show up on their radar screen. But they're very good at writing refusal letters. When you get a refusal letter from one of these big foundations, you almost feel like you feel pumped up. I mean, they tell you no in such a delicate way. Just incidentally, also applied to the ISKCON Foundation at that time. They were the only ones that kind of were, their letter was a bit put offish. It was more, the mood of their letter was like, how dare you ask us for money? Theirs was the only letter that bordered on being rude. But the Echoes, they all told you no in such a way that you actually felt good the rest of the day. But lo and behold, one weekday evening, this gentleman, very large man, 6'3", 220 pounds. Turns out he's Stanley Green. He's a cardiologist at the local hospital. He's a stake president, which is a big deal in the Mormon church. It means he's appointed to be over about 1,200 families in our local area. He just shows up one Thursday evening. He says, the church in Salt Lake City has sent me to check you guys out. So he asked questions, and we got to know him, and there was an instant connection. This is one of the most righteous, pious, God-loving people you'll ever want to meet. He's been our dear friend. He was one of our speakers just last Sunday when we celebrated our 20th anniversary. He was one of our speakers when we opened in 2001. He's been a personal friend ever since. He spent the evening with us and went away. We didn't hear anything for a few days. About a week later, he comes back. he said he has this envelope in his hand with a big smile on his face. And he says, I have something for you that you'll like. He'd asked for 50,000. The LDS Foundation gave 25,000. And it wasn't that big of money from a proportional point of view. I mean, after all, we had to raise 1.2 million. But it was significant that the church was adopting us. The church was encouraging us and supporting us. We felt just like the little brother feels when the strong big brother comes and puts his arm around and says, whatever you need, whatever you want, I'll supply. We thought, what a wonderful example. Religions all over the world can take a page from the book of the LDS Church, that they are not only tolerant of, but supportive of, and encouraging to other religions establishing themselves in this area. And this is not unprecedented. Later on, I did a little research and I found out that when Brigham Young founded Salt Lake City and the original grid was planned, an entire avenue, 2nd Avenue, downtown Salt Lake City, was set aside for the Lutheran Church, the Episcopal Church, and the Catholic Church of the Mountains. So it was Brigham Young, the founding father's original idea that Salt Lake City be religiously diverse, that there be a plurality of religions in Salt Lake City. And it wasn't the first time that they had given a grant to another religious denomination or sect, but it was the first time that they gave to a non-Christian religion. And we could only think it was because of our trying to be good neighbors. You know, even when we had nothing more than the radio station, even before we built the log house, we had our first Festival of India out of the basement of the radio station. People sat on straw hay bales just right out in front of that sign. And we put on our own little version of the Ramayan and we burnt Ravana. So altogether, you know, we started having festivals as back early as in 1985. And we had llamas and Head Start programs, school kids, grammar elementary kids would come on a regular basis and visit the llamas. There are people now in their 40s and 50s who came as little toddlers to visit the llamas on our property here. And so we did get that grant from the LDS Church. Now, Dr. Green, that was not his entire story in our life. He later was elected the mayor of Salem, which is the next little town. It's about a half a mile away from us. Every town in Utah has its Spanish Fork Days, Salem Days, Patient Days. The celebration is usually a summer celebration. It lasts from Wednesday night when there's some special service activity and culminates on Saturday night with fireworks and a fair and carnival and so on and so forth. So the first official activity of Salem Days in 1999 is inspired by Dr. Green as the state president / mayor, was to come and help out at the Krishna temple. So that evening, I'll never forget as long as I live, we were swarmed by toddlers, teenagers, parents. Everybody came out with a right good will of selflessness and community service. Their mood was, let's not think of this in the future as their temple. Let's go lay some sod, do some work, and adopt it as our temple. One little side note is that at this time, the construction was in such a state that we had the first floor, and there's a second floor veranda, which is about 18 feet above the ground. And at that time, there was no safety railing. So these kids and the parents, you know, they seem pretty blasé about it. You know, a lot of these kids would sit with their legs dangling 18 feet over the air. And I'm just, the whole evening, I'm like, my heart is in my throat. Oh my gosh, you know, Krishna, please protect these wonderful people. And Dr. Green mentioned this in his talk last Sunday. He said he wasn't worried. He knew that the hand of the Lord was with us, and I certainly hope so. Another little story. One winter around that time, my Bobby was moving a bad hail. She slipped on the ice, broke her fall with her wrist, went to the hospital, which is just like 3 miles away. And they took an x-ray. And the x-ray showed, they had it hung up on the wall there in her room, that there was multiple fractures. X-ray technician came in, he said, you'll have several surgeries but your wrist will never be the same. Dr. Green happened to be passing by. He looked in the room, he did a double take. He said, "Vi, is that you?" I said, "Yes." He came in, he asked the details. We told him what had happened. He said, "Can I say a blessing?" We said, "You certainly can." We closed the door, and the three of us and Dr. Green put his hands on Bhai Bobby's wrist, and he said a blessing for him. After which he said, "I'm going to go get another x-ray." Took her in, got another x-ray. They put the second x-ray up right next to the first x-ray, and lo and behold, it now showed a clean break, simply repaired with a cast. Now Bhai Bobby has full range of motion in that particular wrist. So we had the blessings of the LDS Church. We had the patronage of Dinesh Patel, who ended up giving about $130,000 himself, also raising a similar amount from the Indian community up there in Salt Lake City. We knew we had to open a temple ASAP. It was not something that could be deferred or delayed. I'd seen many temples kind of in a sense. Of course, Krishna consciousness, this can never be said of Krishna consciousness in general, but in a sense, many of the temples that were established decades before there was any Hindu temples erected, ISKCON was the groundbreaking original entity on the scene. And they had buildings from the 70s and 80s that they rented. They had churches that they'd renovated. And I'd seen that in local communities, metropolitan areas, as soon as that consciousness of the Indian community being a power of force arose, there would be a great move to build a Hindu temple. And all of the funds and resources would go to that. So I knew that that time was coming in Utah. When we originally arrived, there was virtually no Hindus, no Indian presence per se. But by the time by the time the 90s came, it was coming. And I knew we had to act quick. We had to preempt any sort of move. I mean, we knew it would come, but we knew we had to get in there first, strike while the iron was hot. And I'm a communicator. I love to speak to people, okay? And I do not like to be disregarded. I do not like to be taken lightly. Anybody who knows me knows about that. If I'm going to speak to people on the radio, if I'm going to MC on the stage for festivals, I want my words to have the maximum impact. I want to be able to represent Prabhupada and Krishna with weight. After all, that's the meaning of guru. One who's heavy with knowledge, one who's heavy with realization. When I speak, I want those words to have a maximum effect on the audience. So if you're in a little rented house or out of a storefront, that's okay. People are not going to take you nearly as seriously as if you have your own from the ground built up beautiful architectural wonder. R.K. Narayan, the great author of India, he said of all art forms, the most public is architecture. Paintings and other works of art are cloistered in museums. There's an admission fee. Only a certain elitist percentage of people usually ever get to see them. But architecture, like our temple, high on a hill, visible for miles and miles around, that belongs to everyone. That's everybody's property. So I knew that come heck or high water, whatever the cost, we had to build a temple. Now it's interesting because we could have opened this temple with a functional building with water and electricity. In fact, we did open the temple in 2001. There were no particular embellishments. There were just the main dome, what we call the cucumber domes, the onion domes were not installed at that time. A bare bones, functional, practical building we could have opened for about $500,000. Well, we wanted to make a statement. As you know, most buildings nowadays, it's 95% functional, right angles and functionality, and maybe 5 or 10 or even 2% decoration. Well, we spent more money on the decoration than we did on the functionality of the building. Those domes and arches and columns, they cost another $700,000. The building itself, the concrete block building, with all the amenities and utilities, we could have done it for 500,000. And let me tell you, every penny was well spent. Every penny that we spent has come back to us 100 times. Now this temple celebrated its 20th anniversary of its opening. Every year we host 3,000 school kids who arrive in yellow buses, spend between an hour and a half and 3 hours on the temple property. They handle the llamas as an icebreaker. They come into the temple for kirtan. They have a Q&A. There's a PowerPoint. And more often than not, they have lunch as well. 25,000 people come every year in March for the Festival of Colors. It's the largest celebration of its kind in all of North America. And we have 2 big billboards on I-15, northbound and southbound. So all the northbound traffic sees a big billboard, just one exit before exit, and all the southbound traffic sees a billboard. So many, many hundreds, if not thousands of people go off the freeway on an unplanned detour to come and visit our temple, have lunch, and patronize our gift store. Every penny that we spent in bringing this temple to fruition was money well spent. We wouldn't do it any other way, and we would encourage each and every yatra in America and India. It's reflexive, wealthy, affluent people. They automatically give to build temples. Our temple, while unique in all of America, the temple in Spanish Fork at the time it was opened is the only Rajasthani-style temple in all of America. It remains only one of 2 Rajasthani-style temples in America. The other one is the one we opened in Salt Lake City in 2019. Here's a picture, thank you, Shakshi Gopal, of the domes. They're made of fiberglass carbon composites, the same material that airplane wings, motorcycle helmets, and satellites are made from. They were made in the factory. They were brought on site on a trailer, and then a big crane lift them into place, and then they were welded into place with tabs. The main dome is a concrete dome. It weighs 33,000 pounds. It was installed in November of 1999. One of the biggest cranes in Utah came to lift it into place. It had been built on the ground, and that crane had to have 88,000 pounds of counterweight on its deck. So that when it lifted this 33,000 pound dome and then swung it laterally over the top of the temple, the crane wouldn't tip over. Just as a side note, how Krishna paved the way, made our crooked places straight. The company that made the fiberglass domes, we asked 3 companies for quotes on these domes. There are 8 onion domes, as you see, and there are 4 large cucumber domes, and then there are 4 smaller cucumber domes. So what is that? 16 domes altogether. So we approached 3 different companies with the designs that Bhai Bobby had made, and we got a $250,000 quote from one company. We had a $250,000 quote from another company. We didn't know how we'd ever be able to pay for that. The third company, Carbon Composites, which is no longer in business, I hope it's not because of this, but they quoted $90,000 for these 16 domes. Again, we couldn't sign the contract fast enough. And once they'd realized that they'd made a mistake in their calculations and should have quoted at least $180,000 to break even and $250,000 for profitability, by this time they were legally contracted and they had to do it. And we, of course, gave them some extra money just to kind of smooth the way. And we also gave them a tax receipt so they could claim the difference as a loss. But they were quite gracious, and they stood in the newspaper picture whenever any dome was being placed. And let me say also, throughout the whole process, the media, Channel 5, KRCL, what's the main station? I can't even think of it in Salt Lake City. KSL. They every stage of the construction, every milestone, they were there covering it. The enthusiasm of everybody, irrespective of whether they're a Krishna or a Mormon or an atheist or Presbyterian, just increased and increased. And so when we finally opened in June 23rd, 2001, we had about 5,000 members of the Indian community, members of the Mormon community, all friends and well-wishers, and they were all full of congratulations, kudos. I remember that day vividly, just going around, and I just said two words over and over and over again, because it wasn't our doing. Fools rush in where wise men fear to tread. We should have, by all calculations, we should have never come to Utah in the first place. All research and development in the area of planning new temples shows that you don't go to an area that's already 90% another religion and build a new temple. It's impossible. You're going to fail. We didn't know that. We just knew that the Lord of millions of universes, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had said, Prithvi Teya Chejato Nagaradagram Sarvachapachoya Muyumnam. Lord Chaitanya had already paved the way. He'd already blessed our missionary endeavors. He'd already said 500 years ago that there will be a temple in Spanish Fork. And so we figured on the heels of Lord Chaitanya's affirmation, we would be successful. All the research and development said otherwise, but you and Krishna are always a majority. You and Lord Chaitanya Maharaj are always a majority. So we were successful. Who could have envisioned that the local community would have been so supportive and so genial and so amicable? And again, a certain landmark occurred last Sunday. We celebrated 20 years coexistence, joy, celebration amongst our Mormon neighbors just day before yesterday. That's pretty much most of the story of Spanish Fork. Probably afterwards, some things will occur to me and I'll say, oh, I forgot this or that. I think those are the high points. Pretty much Gopal Bhatta.
Well,
I did forget one little fact. There was a businessman from Los Angeles who had been my very good friend and co-president when I was president of Berkeley. I won't say his name. His initials are GB, however, and he was also very, very generous in those days.
So I just wanted to share my impressions. It's joyous to just listen to this story. I am feeling so happy for you, happy for knowing that Srila Prabhupada is so pleased with you. I mean, he is beaming, smiling, joyous over everything that you've accomplished. And of course, in less than an hour, you can't tell the whole story. I know there's more, but just tremendous success you've had. And it's like, congratulations.
Thank you. Shakshi Gopal has one final drone video of the temple. I think it's a good note.
We should see the drone. Yeah, for sure.
But let me just defray your praises by saying that, often Krishna will take the least qualified in order to accomplish his purposes. When he takes those people who you least expect to be successful and makes them successful, it shows his power in a greater way. So we can't claim credit for what's happened here. I told this story on the stage on Sunday, and I think everyone got a little chuckle out of it. The most common words out of people's mouths when they walk in the door of our temple is, how in the world did this Hare Krishna temple get here of all places? I point to a painting that Bhai Bobby did of Krishna on the wall. I said, this is the God we worship. You'll note the peacock feather jauntily placed in his crown, the flute to his lips. You'll note the three-fold bending form, and especially the mischievous look in his eyes. So the short answer to your question of how we got here is that God is a prankster. God has a sense of humor. He wanted to do what you could never imagine him able to do. And it's our great fortune. It's the defining feature of our lives that Krishna was kind enough and merciful enough to use Bhai Bobby and I as an instrument in bringing this temple into being. Video time.
Wonderful way to end too, but let's see the drone. Wonderful. Thank you so very much.
Appreciate the opportunity to tell this wonderful story about the potencies of Krishna.
Just a great story. I'm so happy. Okay. We thank our audience. Want to remind them that they can find Charu's portrayal of Srila Prabhupada's arrival in Australia in 1972, I think, 1971. You can find that on our GBC SPT website, which is also a very wonderful story too. And Charu Prabhu, thank you so much. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Haribol.
Haribol, glories to Srila Prabhupada.